Hey friends, welcome to 2022. I'm going to do a quick and dirty, and literally I mean quite dirty, review of this 1zpresso JX Pro. Now, if you're going to start complaining already by I'm calling it the 1zpresso, go take a look at that other English fellow who does a review of cleaning it, a how-to on cleaning it, where he refers to it as the 1zpresso, and I feel totally vindicated. So let's get into it. I actually bought this about a year ago, and I plan to use it occasionally for making V60 pour overs. But then I kind of stopped because I just really don't drink V60. Why did I buy this thing? I don't drink V60 pour. I drink espresso. Those of you who follow the channel know that's pretty much what I do. But I had good intentions. Anyway, it turns out that actually this makes pretty good espresso. And so I started using it. Initially, I was not using it that often. I was using it occasionally because I've got a really great, 65mm flat burr grinder. And so why would I need to use this? And what I've actually found is that this is quite enjoyable to give a slightly different flavor to espresso that I'm making. And there's times I just enjoy using it. Simple as that. I mean, we can enjoy making espresso as well as drinking it. And so I've got a lot of good things to say about this, but it's not perfect. And in fact, there's one flaw with this grinder that I haven't seen anywhere else talk about. So it could possibly be me. Actually, there's a couple of flaws, but there's one flaw in particular that means I'm going to change this grinder out for something else. But it doesn't mean to say that it's not right for you, because I'll explain later on what I mean by that. So let's just go through. I'm not going to go through the tech specs because there's other places you can go and look at that. And if you're like a little pointy-headed kind of coffee nerd that wants to know what size conical burr grinders, this is not the right channel for you. Well, it may be with Maxon, but not with me. I don't even know. I can't even remember the name of the grinder, the other grinder I've got. It's an Eureka something, Atom 65 something, I think. But really what I want to know is, does this make good coffee? And the answer is yes. It makes really great coffee. It's got great burr set in there. I don't know. I think it might actually be a Mazza burr set. I'm not entirely sure. Go look it up. But it's got a great burr set in there. All that I care about is it makes great coffee. It makes great espresso coffee, and it is slightly different from the flat burr grinder I've got. So there are times that I use this instead of the flat burr. When would that be? Well, number one, if I come down in the morning, and my son, I know I get up before my son. If I come down in the morning and I want to make a coffee, but I don't want to purge the coffee out of the Eureka, because I don't want to waste coffee, because I'm one of those guys that just thinks about, how that coffee was grown and shipped across the world and, all the rest of it, and I bought it, and then and it's come here, and then I'm just going to purge it and throw it in the bin. I'm like, oh God, no. Somebody should drink that coffee, but it shouldn't be me because I don't like stale coffee. So I let my son drink the stale coffee without realizing that he's doing that. And then I'll have the coffee from the Eureka after he's had his. So that's our little secret. But I will often make my first coffee in the morning with this. And there's another reason too, which is that this is good. This is nice. If you have it at the right setting, this is a very satisfying thing to do in the morning. I mean, I am up at 3:30, 4:30 a.m. Pretty much never later than 4:30. So it's quiet. I don't want to have the whole electric grinder noise thing going. I'm very zen. I'm zen, baby. I'm down here with my hand grinder, getting my Arabica beans on, and it's nice. I really enjoy that process. The other thing too is that touching it, the tact, what's the word? Tact, who knows? The touching of it feels great. It's well built. It's just solid. You feel like you've bought something valuable. You're interacting with a piece of art. It's got a nice wood handle, and it's just this nice solid lump of metal, with the exception of this rubber, which I'm going to come onto in a minute. And with the exception of this plastic top bit here, which I hated when I first got it, and I thought, this is going to be a problem. I couldn't put my finger on why, but this is definitely going to be a problem. This has not been a problem. So I was wrong about that. Internally, my first little gripe, and this was a thing that stopped me from using it a lot to begin with. Internally, this ring, can you hear that? Can you hear that? Very satisfying, little clicky thing. That's very important, that the satisfying clicks. You've got a little number mechanism here, and you can go around. But are you getting finer or coarser? You have to know. Best thing to do is check on their website. Except they don't have it on their website. They don't tell you like clicky to the right is finer, clicky to the left is coarser. They don't tell you. They expect you to know that. That's really annoying. Because when you get started with this thing, you end up wasting a lot of coffee trying to work out which way to go. And that was a bit disappointing. And then, of course, because I wasn't using it regularly, initially, I kept forgetting, and I had to keep working it up every time, and I'd waste coffee every time. And as I think I mentioned earlier on, wasting coffee is kind of like it's a sin you do go to hell for. So that really hurt. And I would just really love it if they put like a really, basic engraved sign saying this is finer and this is coarser. And that's actually what the Mazda did on their Omega grinder. And others have done it as well. So I don't know why they didn't do it here. And that really annoys me. But now I know, because I use it pretty much on a daily basis and I'm totally comfortable with it. But getting to that point was a bit more effort than it should have been. On this point, actually, what they've got is they've got a little dimple on one of their struts here. And you just line your number up with the dimple. There's 3 clicks in between each number. And I've had in terms of going, this is obviously a stepped grinder because you're going click by click. I've never had a problem with it. My Eureka's stepless, and I love stepless, but somehow this feels right. So that's great. So the bottom part comes out. This is where you put your beans in. I normally just scoop. I'm pretty good now at getting into the bag and scooping almost the right number of beans. Pop that on the scale. Actually, no, you tear it first. So you pop it on the scale first. Then you scoop your beans. Then you pour a little bit in, take a little bit out until you get it perfect. And you get pretty much 0 retention. Very, very little retention in this. And where it does collect, it's often there's a little bit maybe of static in here. They give you this brush, by the way. So this brush comes with it. And on one end of the brush, it's very fine bristles. And the other is a bit more coarse. So you can kind of get in the thing. I find one of those little rocket blowers helps as well. If you're not familiar with a rocket blower, it's for cameras, but you can use them in coffee machines as well. It's going to be one of my tips, my pro tips for another video. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I use that I don't see other people doing, but I think they're clever. So at the bottom here as well, there's usually a little bit collection of coffee, and you just swipe that out. That's it. I mean, I don't know, maybe a gram, probably less than a gram, maybe half a gram of coffee gets retained. So then so what you do is you've got that there, put your beans in there, put your top on, grind away, in here, tap, 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 and then that goes nicely into your portafilter, and it fits, and it's all just lovely and perfect, and it works, and it's very zen. It's a very zen operation. Okay, couple of problems. When you're doing this, and you're doing your zen grinding, if you're grinding in a slightly aggressive way, like I sometimes do in the morning, or maybe you've got some beans that need a bit of a finer grind, this can come loose a little bit. So maybe I just have to tighten a bit more. Maybe that could be me, but sometimes it comes loose with it. And it would never get to a point where it fell off. I've never had anything come close to that. But it makes you worried. You get that falling off anxiety. So that's okay. You just stop, you just turn it. It's okay. So that doesn't really bother me, but it's worth pointing out. The other thing, so I mentioned that the clicky wheel, you don't know which way it goes which, but you learn that soon enough. The biggest problem is this. Let me tell you right now, the reason why this grinder will go to another home eventually is this rubber thing. This rubber thing is the wrong material to use. It was not a problem for me for months, and now suddenly it's becoming a problem. You can see it's already slipped up there as I was talking about. See how it's slipping up and down? Okay. it doesn't just slip up and down, it slips side to side as well. Look at that. Can you see that? Slips side to side. That's not good, because when you've got a fine grind that you're doing, this slips and you're holding it, and there are times if you're grinding quite fine, and I've got a particular bean at the moment I've got, which just for some reason needs to be ground insanely fine, and you're finding yourself like sometimes just getting caught and really pushing it, and then that rubber sleeve slips down, slips up, it pinches, and it's annoying. It doesn't stop me from producing great coffee, but the whole point of this is that Zen experience in the morning where I'm having my little, beautiful moment with my coffee grinder, and that stops that beautiful moment. It impinges. It's like that drunk uncle at a Christmas party. It just you're having fun, and then it bursts onto the scene and gets in the way of everything. So so that's a real shame. It's a real shame. But don't let that put you off, because for two things. First of all, I think that'll only affect you if you're making espressos, and if you're only making espresso certain beans. Like for most beans, I'd say 90% of the time, it's not an issue. But for some beans where I need to grind really fine, that's when it becomes an issue. And so, of course, it won't be an issue if you're grinding for any other type of coffee like V60 or mocha pots or whatever else, because it'll be grinding coarser, and and your grind will be lovely. But if you're going to be grinding espresso and only espresso, maybe it's worth waiting for another grinder. And I do really like that Mazzer. I have to say, I will be buying and reviewing that Mazzer as soon as I get my little grubby hands. Let's talk about one other thing too whilst we're doing this. The taking apart of it, because there is one other issue I've got with it. But there's also some positives too. So, if you want to take this apart, let me do that really quickly for you now. It's actually quite simple, but there's a bit of fear involved in doing it, because there's a few moving parts, and you worry that when you take it apart, you'll never be able to put it back together again. But what you can. So what you do is you've got the bottom part here, which is where the burr goes in. You just push that up, and then the clicky wheel at the top just comes off. And you can actually see there as I'm pushing up, that the rubber sleeve's coming off again. It's just a bad design. Just it probably looked good to begin with. Probably they tested it for a while, but anyway. So once that comes off, on the inside, you've got another little wheel, and then the ball bearings underneath that, and that you just push up again on the bottom burr, and that comes out. I'm just a little bit careful with that. Put that there, and then inside of there, you've got, be a little bit careful, because the spindle that holds the bottom burr will just fall out if you're not careful. In fact, let me take that out first, and that just comes right out like there, and there's your bottom burr, and that has a spring and a shim. And what you've got to do if you do take this apart to clean it is you've got to make sure that you recognize which way up everything goes. There is always that English fellow's YouTube video, which is very good. It tells you how to take it apart and clean it. But the little ridge points upwards, and the spring goes with the tapered end down and the flared end up. So that goes like that, comme ça. Then underneath here, this little bit comes out with the ball bearings, which are a sealed unit, so you don't ever need to do any maintenance on them, which is a great design thing. And that's got the little dimples in it, which is where it all the clickiness happens. Huh, it's interesting. I can see a little bit of coffee in there. So, do a cleaning whilst I'm doing a cleaning and a review. I'm getting kind of, look at that. Really getting good value out of my time. So that goes back into there. And that's pretty much it, except there's one more thing to do, of course, which is to take the top burr out, for which you simply just need to, actually, here we go. There's that bit there, so that top bit there, and then this bit here, which just, and that's the other problem. I have never been able to get that off, ever. I actually didn't realize it came off. I was convinced it didn't. And Max told me, yeah, it does. Mine doesn't. No one's been able to take that off. I mean, if I had a a workshop with a vice grip and some, cloth, whatever, I could protect it, and I could open it, but I don't. So, having said that though, I don't really feel the need. I don't really feel the need to do that. So it's never really been an issue to me. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward to pull it apart, I have to say, apart from that last little bit. And you get the satisfying feeling that you've cleaned your tools, got everything set up, and it's pretty straightforward to put back together again. So overall, how do I rate this grinder? I say pretty straightforward to put back in. This is actually now a bit fiddly. It's actually not fiddly, but it's fiddly when you try and do it on camera. What did I do it the right? I said the reverse. It's a reverse. Got to remember that. Yes, reverse thread. So actually putting this thing back together again is not. It's not a problem. It's not a problem. You just put these. It's going to make sure you do everything in order. So that goes in that way around. So we're going to put this in this little flat part, so you can't get that bit wrong. But the important thing is you must push up on the burr underneath. So this little bit here, you have to push up, which exposes the thread for you to wind it down on. And then when you've done it, and the reason I'm doing this, apart from to prove to myself that I can, is that when you've finished tightening up that last bit, the clicky wheel bit, it won't go any further. For me, this now never seems to match what I had it before. So I always have to recalibrate it once I've done it. And I've seen various people come and say, oh yeah, you do it all the way, then it's whole turns to the left for espresso. It's something like 2 whole turns to the left, but it never seems to quite match up to the way I had it before. And that's probably me, and that's probably sort of a bit of, I'll clean that up later. It's probably a bit of voodoo kind of rubbish that I can't get that to ever match up, but it just doesn't ever seem to be the same number. I don't know why. Look, for the price, this is actually a really great hand grinder. I wish they would replace the rubber sleeve. That pretty much is the only thing. But for the price point, the quality of coffee it makes is really quite something else. It surprised me just how good it was. And I don't think there's anything else I would buy at this price point. Not that I know of in the marketplace. But I would spend a bit more extra money personally if you're doing espresso and get the Mazda. I say I can't say, I'm talking about me. I'm not saying that you should. When I say I mean really I'm going to. I'm going to go and buy the Mazda Omega. I'll actually do a comparison once I've got a hold of one. I'm going to buy a Mazda Omega because I think that's going to be a really fantastic grinder for me. They've got a couple of things in there that I really like, including the kind of the easy grind thing setting, which is I guess they've got a bit of gearing in there or something, which makes it easier to grind on a finer level. And their Mazda burrs and a few other little things that I really like. So I'm going to try and work with that now that I know that I'm going to use a hand grinder on a daily basis. But if you are constrained on budget, you don't want to spend that kind of money. I've forgotten how much the Mazda one is, but it's more than this. You want to get the best grinder you can, and you can afford this hand grinder. I would say go for it. It's really I've been very satisfied, very happy with it. And you probably, and I've had this for a year, you might be able to get the replacement sleeve on it, or you might even be able to take it off. I'm not even sure if it necessarily serves a purpose. And if you're not grinding very fine, you probably won't even hit that problem. So hopefully that's been useful to some of you. Tune in next week. I'll do something else, and have a great 2022 already.